Is the question and answer, and being able to talk with the people that come to talk with us. So, I'm Meta Ellis. This is my wife, Emma McDaniel Ellis.
Hey.
Hello. And I actually met her while we were protesting on the Supreme Court steps here in Montgomery. We were protesting Roy Moore, who had decided that, in spite of the fact that the Supreme Court had allowed same-sex marriage, he was not going to allow that here in Alabama. So I met my lovely wife while we were protesting him over and over again, and actually won a case here. It took us 3 tries, but one of my favorite times of protesting in this country was on the steps of the Supreme Court here. I got smart. I had the whole street blocked off, and we paid for every single parking spot, $5 each, so that the horrible protesters that would come from all over the country to protest, queer people coming to protest injustice, they couldn't get close to us.
Yes.
And we're talking terrible situations where they would come with pictures of people with AIDS on the cars and yelling obscenities at us, you know, like we were most horrible criminals on the face of the earth, and screaming and yelling so loud you couldn't talk. So, and throwing things at you, and, you know, I'm talking horror stories for that, and pushing and shoving people and all that. But I digress. My first attempts at protesting were what I learned from my mom and dad. And the most memorable time I've ever spent in my life was as a child here in Montgomery. And I think Lola can say the same thing, because one of the most important times in the history of our country was during the bus boycott here in Montgomery. It is considered to be one of the most successful boycotts that we have ever seen. And people from around the world come here to learn about the process that we went through, and it is a template that we need to be using again. It was the energy of the people working together, and I mean everybody, children, working level people from all levels. Everybody was organizing. You were either taking pamphlets around, you were organizing the vehicles to pick people up. It was one of the most organized events I have ever seen in my life. But it was because the need was so great and the people were so dedicated. It was, I've really never seen anything as wonderful and as breathtaking as what happened during that boycott. It's something that we all should be really proud of. But we need to be using those same tactics today. We got lazy. We have allowed too much to go past us and to ignore what was happening right under our noses. Every hard-fought battle that we have fought has been taken back away from us. And we let it happen. We're totally at fault. We got too carried away with just survival. When there comes a time when you have to put everything on the line, if it means leaving your comfortable little home that you are trying hard to keep track of and putting a tent on the state capitol steps in order to make a point, it's going to take us doing these kind of tactics today, or we're just going to go completely backwards from any progress that we have made. And what I keep telling people, and I hate to say this, but it took things getting as terrible as they are going right now for most of us to stand up and want to do anything about it. So I'm almost glad it's happening the way it is. It is a wake-up call. So I'm hoping that more and more people take seriously what's going on here. We have seen in the past what could happen, what is happening. They're already deporting many of our people, being put into prisons, they're being sent to camps. That's been going on already. Nobody wants to pay attention to what's happening at our borders. We're allowing this to happen, and we're not doing enough collectively about these things. Now we have to, because it's affecting everybody, not just the immigrants, not just the gay people, not just the trans people. It's happening to everybody. So I guess that's what it took for us to wake up. Anyway, that is my main message today. And I don't know, I'm proud of what I learned in my family through my mom and dad and all the wonderful people that we grew up around. Many of them that we're still friends with, and for the past 70 years that we met here, and we're still close to. So I'm going to pass along my baton here to Valda.
Give her a hand. Is this a little bit better? My spiel is a little bit different because I wanted to share, as Ray said, the title of the book is Childhood Memories of the Civil Rights Movement, mainly because nobody ever asked what the children experienced during the Civil Rights Movement, the traumatic events that we had to live through. I think I'm one of the few people, I can be the only one so far that I've come in contact with, but the few people that have lived through personal one-on-one with the Montgomery bus boycott, with the Freedom Rides, as well as with the Selma to Montgomery March, and then going into college. Going through a training for the Freedom Army recruit to learn how to protest at the age of 15. So I'll start off with the very beginning with the Montgomery bus boycott, and my neighbor, who happened to be Martin Luther King and his wife. Did you all pass by the parsonage at all, Martin Luther King? Okay, well, when you go tomorrow, if you just kind of look back, you'll see my house. It's only 2 doors.
We'll make sure they see your
Okay. Building. I'm sorry we won't be in it. I mean, I might be, I never, who knows. But nonetheless, the neighborhood that you will be in is known as Centennial Hill. And it was the fluent African-American neighborhood in Montgomery. I want to drive home the point that Montgomery was truly 100% hardcore segregated. So there was no mixture in our neighborhood. However, we did have our doctors, our lawyers, our educators, our legislators, our bankers, our grocers, our business people in our own neighborhood, which is no surprise that Dexter Parsonage would be built in that neighborhood. So whoever was designed to be a minister was my neighbor. And when I was a little girl at the age of 4, it was Reverend Vernon Johns and his family. And of course, then when they moved out, I was 6 years old, and the newlywed couple, notice I said couple, no family yet, newlywed couple moved in, and that was Martin Luther King and his wife, Coretta. I met him at 6 years old. I want you to watch how I'm growing up through this movement. That's 1954, September. I'm sorry. September of 1954. The following year, November of 1955 is when his daughter was born. So that was the first child. Now he's a family. But 2 weeks later, December 1st of 1955, and I love to tell this part, to ask you, you're in Montgomery and you just came from this place, but what happened on December 1st, 1955, here in Montgomery, Alabama? Okay, something better than that, more fantastic than that. It was my birthday. is because at the age of 8, I was 8 years old, and you could just hear all of the adults chattering about Rosa and blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking they're planning the surprise party for me. And only to find out, no, this is not about you. This is the birth of the modern civil rights movement. And I hear you. But nonetheless, at the age of 8, I can honestly say that was the beginning of my involvement of civil rights, because we had to participate with the movement, and you're not really realizing that you are, but you're participating with the movement. For instance, that December the 5th, when everybody was told not to ride the bus, that morning, everybody is on the porch looking to see, is anybody going to be on that bus? And you're hearing the adults shouting, there's nobody on the bus is empty, yay, the bus is empty, and they're clapping. And of course, I'm 8, so I'm clapping too, yay, the bus is empty, it's empty. But finally figuring out what it was all about. And my mom and dad, as I said, were very much involved with the movement. Because of the fact that King is right down the street from us, he and my dad became extremely good friends. We're Catholic, so we didn't go to his church. And of course, my Coretta and my mom were both friends at the same time. And one of the things that I noticed in going back and looking at the years, both of them technically were pregnant during that time. So we never think about the women. Your mom probably was too, right? Always. But you think about the fact that the women, these are things that nobody thinks about real life. Was pregnant at that time, but nonetheless, during that particular boycott period, as Mela said, it's unbelievable the solidarity of a group of people. You would never see it again. And there were no marches. There were no protest marches. This was simply people for 381 days deciding not to ride the bus. They walked, and they walked, and they walked. So that was a totally different type of experience for that one, okay? But nonetheless, we had to go through the bombings. Their house is bombed twice, am I right? Twice. Martin Luther King's house is bombed first, I think, during the Montgomery bus boycott. So if his house is bombed, we're going to get collateral damage. The next time that it was attempted to be bombed was the following year, 1957, the month after the boycott ended, when everybody thinks that everything is kumbaya and everybody's loving each other. No, 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 and no. Once the boycott was over, that's when all of the H broke loose, and they wound up with bombs of all the churches and the ministers' homes and all of the above, camp stands as well. So growing up and experiencing and living through those bombings are some of the traumatic events that for me, that's just the boycott era. Now I'm 13 years old, and the Freedom Riders come to town. Everybody familiar with the Freedom Riders? We're talking about the Freedom Riders, okay? This is the group that came from Nashville with John Lewis and Bernard Lafayette, Diane Nash. And that group that was so badly attacked at the Greyhound bus station and attacked again at Reverend Abernathy's First Baptist Church, to the point that Martin Luther King had to go in the basement, make contact with Robert Kennedy to get him to activate the National Guard, to get them out of the church. He loads them, they load them up on the National Guard trucks, and you bring them to our house. I'm 13 years old, early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, watching these young students walking down the hallway, bloody, battered, beaten, John Lewis bandage on the back of his head, and collapsing because they were exhausted after all of this that they've gone through. The way that they operated it, once they got to the safe house, they continued to call others to let them know they were safe and where it was. And the number count continued to grow. Well, I asked this question to every tour group, when was it, did you ever even heard of the Freedom Rides? There was a story that was like an event, but a non-story that people didn't really hear about until later. Right. And then later in life, when magazines are coming out and documentaries are being made and movies are being made about this, chatter going on, and some of my sister and our friends were talking and said, did you know the Freedom Riders were in Montgomery? We said, yeah, we knew, because they stayed with us for 4 days, so we knew that. And so you have to be in the house with them as they're strategizing, along with the leaders. The leaders, which included Martin Luther King, James Farmer, Abernathy, Y.G. Walker, Fred Shuttlesworth, James Lawson, and all of those, and the student leaders, Diane Nash, John Lewis, Bernard Lafayette, and others that were there planning. So here we are in the midst of all of these people, not knowing, because the house was always filled with people like that. It was like strategies. The drugstore was a strategic meeting place for the boycott. But we had to go to school and come back, and somebody might be in your bed or whatever. But anyway, it was watching that kind of thing and looking at those particular students. And then we fast forward to 15 and Birmingham. 1963 was absolutely awful. You know, Birmingham, the kids were bombed in the church, and they're also training the students the nonviolent method of how to protest a children's march. At the same time, they're training the students in Birmingham, they're training us in Montgomery on how to be nonviolent. And we had to join the Freedom Army recruit. I don't want to say had to, we volunteered to join the Freedom Army recruit to learn how to protest. Because we said, you don't just get up and decide, I'm going to be nonviolent today. It was a training session that we went through. And of course, then we go into that part. 65, I'm now 17 years old. And I point that out because I think everybody has seen the picture, and you will see it someplace or not, of Martin Luther King, Reverend Abernathy, John Lewis, an albino minister, and a host of others, locked arm in arm, marching down the street, okay? And everybody thinks they're Selma to Montgomery, and it's not, okay? That picture was taken right in front of our house. And when you see it, it says, everybody would say, oh my gosh, this picture's right in front of your house. Did you see that march? I said, no, I was in that march. Because I'm 17 now. You see what I mean? How I'm growing up with all of these different events. But nonetheless, these are the kinds of things that we went through. I go into college. Stokely Carmichael is on campus. My mindset is going in a different way now from the nonviolent of Martin Luther King. Now we're a little bit more assertive. Black power, dashikis, right on, right off. You know, that kind of thing that's going on. All of the above, down to the people, all of that. And then he gets shot. That was my breaking point. When Martin Luther King was assassinated, I was a junior in college, Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Our dorm was right on a corner, and Nashville was in an uproar, fire, tear gas, and all on the campus. National Guard is on the campus as well. A group of us went on to the roof of my dorm and started making these Molotov cocktails and fire bombs that we were going to throw down on anybody that we saw white. Luckily, we didn't do it. But that day, I can honestly say, was the day that and the only time I ever felt hate in my heart and the mindset of a rioter. And I tell people, you don't understand. I've known this man since I was 6 years old, in and out of that house, get the hugs, get all of the kisses, go, just come down to watch videos, whatever the things, what happened. So this was very personal to me, as well as the fact that we are sick by this time, like we are today, of being told no and all of these barriers after 20 years, because I'm 20 years old now when this is happening. After being told no, you can't go here, you can't drink from this fountain, you can't go to the party, you can't go to the school, you can't. And the one person that had knocked down those barriers is now gone. So that was just absolutely the killer for me at that time. I get married and I go to Maryland, and who's in Maryland? The George Wallace. And he's running for president. And he's at like 2 exits away from where I live. And just the thought of him being there was like, oh my God. And then he gets shot. And of course, when he gets shot, my mind again takes me to, now is your turn. Now is your turn. Because all I'm doing is remembering people are dead because of you. You see what I'm saying? But he had a change of heart. Maybe that was God's way to make him see his ways. But I say that to nowadays to look at our children, and Ned and I both are on the same page as far as setting the example for children and making sure that we train them to let them know what's coming, because all of this today is extremely triggering for me. The songs that you sang earlier are very triggering for me because we had a different passion with the words that we were saying, especially We Shall Overcome. It's not just a song, it was a meaning, a purpose, exactly. So, anyway, let me put that in on a high note. I'm so glad to see everybody. Question and answers.
I'm going to begin, and then I'll let you guys go. I want to go to Meta first, because your childhood is so unique. It's the 19th, may I ask what year you were born?
I was born in 1952.
So you were born when your family moved to
I
Montgomery.
was 2 years old when we moved here.
And you're growing up not only in a segregated society, but you get the unique vantage point of being a little white child surrounded by a black community, and then getting the same punishment that your black neighbors got.
Absolutely.
How did you process that growing up?
That's all that I knew. I was raised in black neighborhoods. And
She is black. What's wrong with y'all?
And all my brothers and sisters and I, we were so disappointed when we found out we weren't black. We just assumed that we assimilated what we grew up with, but we did have a very unique upbringing. And we had some very unique parents too. I mean, I did not realize at first how unique our upbringing was. But then the older I got, the more I realized the importance of being bridge builders like we were. That it was our responsibility to infiltrate mostly into white communities and help the understanding, okay? I was much more comfortable in black neighborhoods, going to black schools. I had a hell of a time when we started being bused to the white neighborhoods. I really had the strongest adjustment time was adjusting to going to a white school. And I mostly hung out with my friends, and they could not figure me out. There was all kinds of rumors going on that I'd been adopted by a black family, you name it. But it took me a while to assimilate and get to understand being around white people, okay? So I guess that did make it a little unique for us. But we had the best upbringing when it comes to being around people that really loved us. You know, especially here in Montgomery. And coming back to Montgomery after years of being in other parts of the country, it was just like coming home for us. You know, the people that we knew all these years just embraced my parents when they came back here. I'm so thankful that they came back here to spend their last years.
And I have to say that her mom, Jeannie, being a woman of a particular era, was very supportive of her husband. She really was.
Absolutely.
But she never finished her college degree, because when they married, he was already graduated and he was called to churches, and so she followed and became a pastor's spouse. However, she wanted to finish her undergraduate degree. So when they moved back to Montgomery, she went to an HBCU, Alabama State University. And in her 80s, graduated with her degree.
She was what they consider to be the oldest graduate of Alabama State University. She was so proud of that. And I think that was my favorite day of my whole life, was watching my mom graduate. Wow. She was an awesome student, and all of her professors loved having her in class because she'd show up on time. She sat in the front seat, you know, carted her little, she walked from her house all the way to the college, back home, carrying her little bag. And she'd be up all night long doing her paperwork and calling my youngest brother to help her with her PowerPoints.
God.
He's a math teacher, so she was calling him up at all hours to get help But she, and that was just the proudest day we've ever spent, was watching her graduate.
What did they say to you about why they did what they did? Down here.
They were called. They took very seriously what Spirit led them to do. And anytime they were called to a different congregation or to a different job, they both prayed on it. And they were really two of the most spiritual people I've ever met. And the more they grew and became more accepting of other people's ways, the more they were able to teach other people to be open-minded too. So they were progressing as they went along as well.
And Reverend Gretz used to say that the civil rights movement was a demonstration of the black church teaching the white church what it meant to be Christian.
Oh, that's good.
Absolutely. I've never met two people that walk their talk as much as my folks. And that is one of the things I heard from everybody that ever met them, was they were so proud of them because they didn't just talk about what they were doing, they walked it every day. And they meant it, they meant every bit of it.
One more question I'm going to ask, then I'll be quiet, because I've been here before. Dr. Montgomery, Dr. Montgomery's dad was a Tuskegee Airman, flew planes at Red Tail. Went to Xavier University, got his doctorate degree, was a professional person. They owned automobiles. They did not ride buses. They were insulated as much as money could insulate you in this time from some of the indignities that other working class black people would have had to endure. Why did they do this? They could have been like many other people, particularly black people of a different generation, who were removed from it all because they had education, they had affluence. Why did they care? They could have just lived a life and been privileged people. Why were they involved?
Because money and privilege did not buy you a seat on the bus. It did not buy you a drink at the water fountain or allow you to go into the movie theater. It didn't matter. It wasn't a socioeconomic issue. It was a racial issue, period. And those that had helped. Like during the boycott, those that had the cars that we had provided the transportation for those that did not have. And I know at my dad's drugstore, a lot of the people that were down there that we would meet, the drugstore was a safe place where they would come from other parts to say with their packages to shop. They could leave them in the drugstore and he was there ready to take care of them, watch children or whatever that they needed to have done. And in fact, it was Reverend Gratz that told me some of the things about my own dad that I did not know. And that was the fact that he kept a penny ante, what you call a penny ante fund, a little penny ante fund, so that if the policeman picked up anybody and took them to jail, it was him. They picked him up, took his daddy, because his daddy was transporting some of the people, and the people saw the policeman pick him up and put him in the car and ran into the drugstore to tell him, and daddy got him bailed out before he could even get processed. So he was the kind of person that kept all of that. At the same time, he was responsible for coordinating transportation while he's filling prescriptions. He's doing the transportation to the E.L. Posey parking lot and all those different places. But we didn't grow up feeling like we were different. Right. You know, we really didn't, because whatever privileges, if that's what you want to call it, we had was shared by anybody that needed it, you know. And you're right, it wasn't until you explained it that way that they even thought about it.
You went to private school?
We went to private schools, yeah, we went to private schools, HBCUs, you know, that's a Fisk University, and, you know, pledge sororities and all of the things like that. But we never, I know there was a number of living, and everybody was included. Yeah, that's right. People just loved me, and they loved my brothers and all that, because people were people. Right. There was never a look down on you like you would think that you had, but, you know, when we look back on it, my great-grandfather was an Alabama State Senator during the Reconstruction period, and my dad used to talk about him all the time. Well, he would tell us about the senator, the senator, the senator. We thought that was a nickname. We didn't know he was really a senator. Until a historian told us, yeah, he was a real big deal. But I'm saying that to say, John William Jones. He was the one that owned a large amount of that property in Centennial Hill. But that's the same way when he mentioned Dad being a Tuskegee Airman, okay? You're Tuskegee Airman, so what? I didn't know that was a big deal until the Lawrence Fishburne Tuskegee Airman came out. And I saw my dad's picture. And I knew he was a Tuskegee Airman. I knew he was the 99. That's how he met my mom. She was in Charleston, South Carolina. You know, all of that. And, but I didn't know this was a big deal until I saw the movie. Just the way the Freedom Riders didn't know that all of that was going on in our house and that just another was a big deal until 2011 when the documentary came out. That was 1961. I'm finding out in 2011 that this was a big deal. And I say that because, again, my mom and dad had been at the forefront of all of that to open up the doors, to welcome. So I learned from them. They set a tremendously strong example on how to really be a people person.
Yes, I have a question for Madam. Thank you for taking the question. When you were talking about the protests at the Capitol, Supreme Court, what groups were you associated with then? How was that organized? I mean, you weren't just out there yourself.
No, actually, there was a lot of different LGBTQ organizations across the state that organized that. And when I first moved back here, I started up a group called Montgomery Pride United, because when I first moved back here, there wasn't much going on for support for our community. And so our organization got together with an organization in Huntsville, which is where Emma came from. They sent a busload of people down from that. And then we had
Southern Poverty Law Center.
yeah, Southern Poverty Law Center, ACLU, and several other organizations, Human Rights Campaign from Alabama. And so we all organized this together. But we had 3 different protests throughout that year before they actually took it to court, and we actually won that case.
Let's come to her, then we'll come back.
Dr. Montgomery, and then maybe Miss Meta too. In Texas, our conservative legislatures are trying to take white black history out of the schools and not talk about slavery because it might hurt the little white children's feelings, and people want to coddle them. What were dinner conversations like at your table? I mean, were your parents sharing stuff, and when violence was happening, how did you hear about that?
You just lived it.
Right.
That's all I can say. There was no discussion about it. This was so normal. When I stressed in the very beginning, this was a 100% solid segregated city and neighborhood. So everybody was living that same thing. There was nothing to really explain. What may make some sense to you, or to explain it, I should say that, is the fact that we were, when I say insulated, is because the whole neighborhood was your family. No matter where you went, you could go all over, like Opie could go all over Mayberry. We could go all over our little section and nobody could bother you. We were safe. We stayed within our safe confines. And, but there was never really discussion. We did have the family meals and all of the above. My grandmother lived next door as well. So, you know, there was never anything about stay here, don't do this, don't do that. The one thing I can say that my dad taught us was not to ma'am and sir anybody.
Right.
Now that sounds hard, but he said you don't say ma'am and sir to anybody. And now I'm thinking I thought really that was because of his military training. Probably had enough of that. But then I noticed that that really goes back to slavery times and the hardcore civil rights time that the police, that they want you to ma'am and serve them. Just I guess for respect or whatever, but you were polite, now don't get me wrong. You were, yes, grandma, or yes, Mrs. So-and-so, or yes, so you addressed them properly. But that was one thing that I can remember, and I double checked and asked my sister, do you remember that? And she said, yeah, I do. So, as we get older, we have to check each other to validate our memory. But that was the one thing, and that when the boycott ended, and we did ride the bus. And when I say we, it would be us riding the bus maybe to go downtown. We could walk because it wasn't only an hour away. But we might want to go to the movies with a group of friends and we ride the bus. And he said, you sit on that bus and you sit right behind the driver. You sit as close to the front as you possibly can. And to this day, I do the same thing, even if I'm on the side of the bus. I'm in the front.
Can I just make a comment here? I think that one of the observations that what Val was saying, we were comfortable in our own neighborhood.
Yeah.
We didn't have an interest in living amongst white folks.
Yeah.
It wasn't our way of life. The problem came when we were denied our privileges to shop and eat and go wherever we wanted to go in the manner in which we wanted to go. But I didn't have a problem going to the segregated school. I didn't even know there was a difference.
We had a good time.
We had a great time. I was a majorette. Somebody go there.
I have a question for Meta. You mentioned how important boycotts were and are, and I wonder if you have any suggestions for what would be effective boycotts for us to think about now.
Well, in our country, money talks. So think about ways that you can effectively cut off the power, and talk amongst your friends. Think about where you could effectively spend your money or not spend your money. So, and get real about it. I've seen a lot of planned things like that. On Thursday we're going to boycott Target and this one for Walmart and all that. You got to get more real than that.
Yeah.
Stop doing things. In fact, there's a lot of stuff you can do without.
Yeah.
But the people in power are counting on you to spend your money with them. When you stop doing that, or stop utilizing their services, or shut down Facebook, or whatever they're making their big bucks on, that's effective. Okay? Think about it.
I was hoping you'd tell us.
Next question.
As little girls, elementary school, maybe up through middle school or junior high, given the activities of your parents, the status of your parents, did other kids treat you any differently? Were we just part of the group?
We're just part of the group. In fact, I was thinking about this at one point later on. In 6th grade, we had to do a book report, or choose a topic. And so the topic I chose was civil rights. Right? And so here I'm the only white kid in the class. I took a report on civil rights in Alabama. We were in Ohio by this time.
Oh.
It never dawned on me that was kind of bizarre. I didn't think of it as being bizarre.
What did the teacher say?
Nothing.
You don't know something you know.
Yeah.
Right.
I always say right about what you know.
Exactly. So, and I think I got a good report on that. And I remember at the time, I even had a comic book that had a picture of us planting a tree in the crater where one of the bombs hit in the yard. And so I had that as part of my, I thought, well, this is something that would, you know, it was something they could understand with this comic book about, so.
There's something else.
Yeah, but, yeah, most of the time I did not really have that problem. It wasn't until we moved to Washington DC, right after King was assassinated, okay? And the riots were going on, and we were not a known commodity in our neighborhood. So we were targeted quite a bit. Okay, a lot of people were angry. And so that was kind of a dangerous thing to be a white person in DC. And I learned to fight. And I had to fight a lot. But I had lots of friends there too, but it took us a while because we hadn't lived there for very long. And what a time to move somewhere. During the riots, I got arrested a number of times just for being out past curfew and things like that. And it was a, you know, really rough time. Spent a lot of time protesting down against the war in Vietnam. You name it, I was down there protesting. My whole family was. We were down there for the Poor People's Campaign. And that was one of the saddest times I have ever spent, was watching all the people coming in the rain, and you know that hardly any of the senators or the House of Representatives would even talk to the people.
Right.
And I remember standing out around the burn barrels out in the rain with the people that had marched across the country to be there. All of us standing out in the rain. And the sadness that everybody was feeling because of the lack of respect and lack of action they got from all that work coming there. That was pathetic.
This question is for both of you. If you had the opportunity to speak to young college students today, and you had a chance to talk to them about what they could be doing more of, what would that conversation sound like?
Well, I just came back from SMU to do the same thing. Just like, we talk to college students all the time that come into tourism, or we go visit, and the question comes up, just as you asked it. A lot of times it depends on what they're asking me. And most of the time, I found that they were saying just that, I don't know what we're supposed to do. I've got all this anger in me and I just don't know how to direct it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I told them, well, the first thing is to change that word from anger to passion. Don't lose the feeling, but just change it to passion, because the same thing is required. You're gonna have to learn to organize, educate yourself, and also find like-minded people that you can plan with, if that's your goal, to plan to do something with. I tell all of the students, and sometimes the others get mad at me, I say, I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z because they think like we think. They've got the same passion and mindset that we have. They just have a different way of delivering it, because we had to do old-fashioned teaching. That's kind of like, but they've got, oh, he's a teacher, okay, but I love, I mean, I'm
That's right,
serious.
University of Texas and also.
Oh, okay, great, okay. Well, I told that, I've got a picture hugging this one young Gen Z student at SMU, just came down to give me the biggest hug, and we got the a picture together, because I told her, I said, I just love you, and I said, the reason that the person that turned me on to you, to that group, was David Hogg. If you can remember the Parkland shooting, when they had Parkland shooting down in Florida, am I correct? It was Florida. And he was 17 years old and took command of that mic. And I said, that's what I'm talking about. That's it. He's the it person right there. And look at where he is now, up in Washington. I look at the Justins. I call the Justins out of Tennessee, Justin Pearson and Justin Jones. You know, I just look at them, and they are the ones that have the it factor. Let me put it that way. They have it. So right now, I just kind of hopefully just be a vehicle for them to bounce ideas off of, because their methods, as I said, are gonna be so different, but the foundation is the same, and that drive, is the same, so, yeah, so we're on the same page.
Absolutely.
We have time for a couple others? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna piggyback after that. The important thing is to not lose hope. And I've heard a phrase quite a bit from a lot of people that finding your joy is a form of protest. Do not allow what's happening today to take you down, to get you fearful. Just stand up to it. But find a way to keep the joy in your life, because that's what's going to keep you going. Find joy in the work and find that passion. That passion that's the key element right there. And find like-minded people. There's a lot you can do on your own, but if you find like-minded people, I found my partner in my 60s, okay? I don't know what I would be doing today if I did not have Emma to work with. But that was the universe putting us together and knowing that I couldn't do that work by myself. I have a partner now, and I haven't most of my life, so.
Just like the women in the background of the bus boycotts.
That's right. They were the strength.
They were the
They were the
Yeah.
strength. The women were the strength.
The women were the strength.
That's right.
They still are.
Power to the people.
Yes, still are.
The hour is long. Do I see any other hand? Go
I
ahead.
had the privilege of hearing your parents speak in Austin about 22 years ago at the Westlake Lutheran Church. And I was able to purchase, they were selling the calendar of the busway here in Montgomery, and I still have that in my possession.
That's amazing.
I want to end, because the hour is long, we have to be up on the bus early in the morning. But I want to end, I've never asked this question before, so this will be a first. I want to ask the spouses, what is it like to marry into these activist families? We've all been thinking it. Did you grow up this way? Was it totally out of the norm for you? How have you adapted to marrying into these families with this heart of passion for justice?
There's only one side.
See, you made me 2 years old, so.
Well, I've had the opportunity to know Val since 2 years old. But of course, living in Montgomery, I lived right now, which is virtually downtown Montgomery. I lived at the top of the hill next door to St. John's Church.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. So anytime I would walk out of my house in the morning, anytime, before they built the building, I would look to my right and I would see the Capitol. And I would tell people, in my good youth arm days, if I had a good flat rock, if I threw it twice, I would hit the Capitol grounds from my front porch. Again, when they had the Freedom Riders were attacked at the church, well, I lived at the top of the hill, and First Baptist Church was the next block over. And before, we were coming back from Mobile, and the rioters were starting down the hill, they were throwing debris. My father grabbed us and put us in the house, so he could look out the window and see everything going on. Now, again, are you going to our First Baptist Church?
We'll find out.
Okay, well, the police department was a green space. And back in the 50s, before they closed the park, I think you remember they closed the park. But it was kind of the late 50s. We would play out there in the green fields, and Dr. King and Dr. Abernathy would come out and football with us. And some occasions, eventually, white kids came and we would play ball out there in front of the church where the police department is now. And the police would watch us play ball in one corner, they would ride up to the next corner, and we played maybe during fall, a little baseball, and one day the police came by and said, okay, you all take your equipment, go over here, you take your equipment, go over there. And when it was all said and done, they didn't have any equipment, and the police just looked at, he just kind of stood there and said, But of course, Dr. After that, I know he saw us out there playing quite frequently under segregated times.
Was it a fast study when you married into this family? Did you?
That's what he said.
A
Yeah.
fast study, we were kind of used to the same thing.
Kind of get you on it, yeah.
I tell we were together from 2 years old, so.
So we've always had.
Yeah, I think she's
Oh my goodness. When I met Meta, it was 2015, and I had come from Huntsville, which was 3 hours north of here, to protest our Supreme Court judge, as Meta told you. So we met in 2015 on the Alabama Supreme Court steps. But when I met Meta, I had no idea of her history, of who her parents were. She was not one to brag about her parents or her history. And so I had no clue about who her parents were until I came. She invited me to come to Montgomery for her parents' 65th wedding anniversary. And so I came to Montgomery and I met her parents, and I believe you were there too. Yes. And that was the first time I met Meta and her family. I met her family there. And it was a multiracial, multicultural, multi-gendered family. Such a diverse family to meet and then to eventually date Meta from a different city back and forth. And then one day Meta comes to Huntsville and she says, "What I'm really here for is to ask you, will you marry me?" And I said, "Yes, of course I will." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm moving to Montgomery." To have met Meta and not know her history, or her family's history, she stands on her own. Her merits speak for themselves.
Amen.
And I'm such a privileged person to have been able to meet her and to love her. So meeting someone who's already in the movement, so to speak. I was coming from Huntsville representing the transgender community. And then to meet someone that has transgender people in their family was such a sigh of relief, and then to find out I have gay relatives in Montgomery was even a, oh my God. But for the first 5 years that Meta and I were together, we had the honor and the privilege of educating counselors, social workers, other service providers, schools, colleges. We were able to work with educators and help them understand the LGBTQ community and the problems, the discrimination that we face, especially the transgender community. A few moments ago, I used social media, and I wrote, "I'm with Meta Ellis in Volta, Paris, Montgomery. And we're at Odessa's Blessings, and we're with a bunch of Episcopalian and Baptist outlaws." Really, what they're trying to do, they're trying to make everyone in this room outlaws. You know, if you're invested in DEI, if you're invested in equality, if you're standing up for my rights, you're outlaws. I was surprised to learn a few years ago that being transgender is an act of resistance in itself. And all I had wanted to do was to live my life. My last goal in my life, and I have been very blessed to achieve many goals in my life. I've been very blessed to achieve goals. My last one of the last ones, I may still set one or two more. One of my last goals in life, I just wanted to be a little old lady who swept her front porch and fed the cats. And I have achieved that goal. With Meta, we are the two cat ladies on our streets.
Would you give our guest a big round?
If you have a shirt and it's too small for you, I apologize. I got them from the state of Alabama. They gave them to me to give to you, and they apologize if it doesn't fit. Maybe you can swap with somebody and give it